Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham, the season premiere of Supergirl, as well as the latest episode of Lucifer. Starting off with Gotham, we got the continuation of the Mad Hatter. Now, I'm glad this didn't get technically resolved in this episode, because I was thinking okay, we're going to just get rid of him out of the way. I was like, okay. I was wondering if he's going to be like a sideline villain, basically okay, they lock him up now, but obviously he pops up later on. But it's but then it clicked in my head, it's called Mad City, so obviously it seems like he might be the main antagonist of the season, which I'm glad about because I like him a lot, because this episode just kind of reinforces what I kind of brought up before, just how deadly of an opponent he is. I mean, the whole thing with Jim this episode, that kind of tripped me out, that he was still under the influence of what the Mad Hatter or Jervis did to him, and that just kind of blew my mind. Now, what I'm trying to understand is, was that necessarily simply because Jim was still struggling with, basically the Mad Hatter hit him at a very, vulnerable parts about himself, just basically everything that's happened to him up until now. It kind of, it brought those feelings to the surface, stuff that Jim had probably buried down deep down, didn't talk about, didn't confront, kind of was in a sense running away from. So what I'm trying to understand is, because Jim was still struggling with those feelings, that it stayed in his mind, or was it the fact is that even when it's all said and done, it disappears? Because the way Alice was making it seem like it should have worn off, but it stayed with Jim. So I'm guessing if the person is, I guess depending on what he does to them, maybe he can make it prolonged, or maybe it's just if the person's still dealing with that, if the trigger still stays with them, the impulse. And it's just multiple times throughout the episode, he tried to kill himself, first walking out into traffic and then pulling a gun on himself the first time. But the second time he pulled a gun on himself, he was able to kind of break through it. But to me, that was just fascinating. And he kind of used the words, Jervis kind of was oh, you broke free of my spell. I was it's kind of like a spell. And it's just, I'm very interested to see where his character goes from it, especially considering the fact is that Alice is now dead, which I wish he didn't go that route, but I get the feeling if she would sadly she would rather be dead than be alive, because apparently he's been doing this type of thing to her since they were little. He's always controlled her, and she even said that he kind of made her think certain thoughts that a brother should never have. And it's it went there, and it's that's sad. And because I knew that he was obsessed with Alice in Wonderland, but it seems like in this actual interpretation, it's not just actually, it seems like the story of Alice in Wonderland kind of folds around them. It's not what he's obsessed about. It's kind of a representation of what he's obsessed about. And he's obsessed with Alice, his sister. He's in love with her. He wants to control her, to have her all to himself. But now that she's dead, there's no, he's going to be even crazier. Because I love in the opening when he ended up killing that dude with the mallet. That was I was oh, are we going there? And he did. The guy even had placed his hands on his head, smiling, like he was laying down on a pillow, and let him squish his head like that. And I just kind of was that just shows you just how deranged he is, and just how it's he's a very fascinating villain, and just on a very psychological level, because that's kind of his thing. She even Alice even said it, basically, she attacks them with her blood, and he attacks their mind. That once he gets inside your head, there's no getting away from that. Luckily for Jim, he was able to break through that. But like I said, I'm very curious to see what he does now that he's lost his main reason for, and that being Alice. But once again, it sucks that she died, but I kind of do think she's better off, because it's better than being with her brother. I mean, it was never really brought up, but did they actually get all of her blood that he had put into syringes or not? I don't think, because he pulled out some of her blood in every one of them. So it's maybe that's going to be something we're going to see him kind of enact in the future, because she kind of brought it up in this episode that her blood does different things to different people. It's just different people have different reactions to it. And I mean, at the end of the episode, we saw that Barnes got hit, so I'm very curious to see what that reaction was. Now, he was no. So was that no as it brought something to the surface that he didn't want? He's kind of being enraged by something that got brought to the surface. Literally in the back of my mind, something kind of crossed my mind. What if some shape or form Alice lives through her blood? That every time her blood gets passed on to someone, a little bit of her goes with them, and what if that little bit of her blood that transferred into Barnes ended up making a little bit of Alice travel with, I don't know, and maybe she was saying no, Barnes was saying no, because it's Alice in there being like, no, I can't still be alive, I thought I was done with this. That's just me throwing that out there. I'm probably completely wrong, but it'd kind of, I mean, I think it'd be interesting if that was the case, but, or someone could look at it and be like, oh, that's completely stupid. I mean, I'd like to get your thoughts on that. What did you, like, interpret that as? I'm sure it's probably just going to be something as like he's just kind of like pissed about something. It's like no, and I'm very interested to see what that has to, what him being in that state will mean towards Jim, because out of anyone, Jim is kind of one he has the biggest problem, and so I'm wondering, will that kind of like it kind of amplifies what's already there in the person. That's kind of how Jervis kind of explained it to Alice. It kind of amplifies what's already there. So, you know, who does he have the biggest problem with? Jim. So he even brought it up to Bullock this episode, being like, you keep going like this, Jim is going to end up getting killed. But I like what Harvey said. He was like, yeah, but until then, I'm not going to turn my back on it. It's like, you go, Harvey. It's like, yes, Jim kind of has a tendency to kind of rush head first, not really thinking of the consequences. I mean, he has the best of intentions sometimes, but, you know. And also in this episode, we kind of confronted the whole Lee thing, because that's a big part of the reason why he's in the state he's in, like why Jervis's whole thing is working on him. And it led to an interesting conversation with Lee. Like, you know, Lee is like, you know, because she's like, you have nothing to say to me. And sadly, Jim was like, no, I don't have anything to say. He's like, the past is the past. I can't change it. And, you know, it's sad because, like, from the very beginning, it's like, you know, Lee only moved on because she wanted to be with Jim, but he pushed her aside. She had to go through losing their baby by herself. Like, he never once, you know, spoke to her in all that time he was in jail, because he found out from Harvey, but he never reached out to her because he was so caught up in his own melancholy that he couldn't bring himself to even be mixed up in hers. Like, he was dealing with that. Like, the best thing would have been to come together to deal with that, but he just, like I said, being in the whole situation he was in last season, he just couldn't break himself out of it. And when he finally got the chance to, when the time came, she had already moved on, because Mario was there for her in her time of need when she was just down on, just in a way broken. He was there to help pick her up and help her piece herself back together after everything that had happened. So, and I really liked it. It's basically like there's a difference between moving on and letting go. You know, it's because it's like, if you're moving on, that means you're dealing with everything and you're at least, you know, taking steps forward. But, you know, letting go means you're just kind of staying where you are and just trying to forget everything, you know. But luckily, Jim was like, you know, at the end of the episode, kind of everything kind of made him realize, he's like, no, Lee, you were right. Everything you said was right. And I'm happy for you. She's like, really? He's like, I'm trying to be. So he has a lot more to say, but he just can't bring himself to say it because he still loves her. But, you know, he most likely feels like he has no right to. And you could say, yeah, you don't. He doesn't. I mean, it's not going to change how he feels. You can obviously tell he still has feelings for him. Kind of say that Lee probably does too. I mean, because the fact of the matter is their past will never change. Because no matter what happened between them, they still loved each other at one point. And that doesn't go away so quickly, you know. And I'm sure seeing each other doesn't make that any easier. It's probably one of those situations, out of sight, out of mind type of situations, where he always thought about Lee, but, you know, her being around now more often. She is working at the GCPD, so it kind of makes it a little harder, you know, kind of have to face reality a little bit more in that situation, but I don't know. And then also was the whole other Bruce and Selena hanging out thing. Other Bruce is pretty kick-ass. He took those two dudes down, even breaking one of their arms, and just kind of did it like effortlessly. And then Selena, I thought to call her Selena, too much once upon a time. Selena was actually being like, whoa, that was pretty badass. But then she saw Bruce's stomach. She's like, whoa, you're not Bruce. But she didn't freak out. She actually took time, talked to him, got to know him. Even kissed him, because he even referenced the point of, like, you know, it's like the way you were looking at it. She's like, the way you were looking at Bruce. She's like, I wasn't looking at him any particular way. And basically, you know, he didn't really have anybody, and so even like kissed her and everything. And I really love the conversation Bruce has later on with Alfred. He's like, so Do you think he was telling the truth when he said he kissed Selena? And then Alfred's just like, I'm not having this conversation with you. He's like, come on, you've seen interrogations. You know how to understand people, tell whether someone's lying or not. He's just, I'm not doing this. And he was like, and then Bruce was like, maybe, do you think she thought he was me when she kissed him? And then he just kind of smiles and said, yeah, she thought he was me. So it was kind of interesting seeing a little bit of that jealousy, because it was interesting that the other Bruce had to make sure that was the last thing that was said before he left, made his exit, even smiling about it. He knew exactly what he was doing that would get underneath Bruce's skin, but it's like, yeah, I kissed her. But I mean, I could be remembering this wrong, but they've, like, Bruce and Selena have kissed before, haven't they? I'm pretty sure that's happened. Because he brought up the fact is that Bruce is always, like, he's like, you have everything, but you take it for granted, essentially, or are you too scared to make your move? And I'm sure, that's why he took pride in it, because it's like, I was able to be you and take the opportunity to kiss her. She liked me, not you, because I'm me. I might not be you, but I'm me, whoever I am. And taking pride in the fact is that Bruce was never able to summon the courage to do something, to move forward between him and Selena. That's what I'm thinking he kind of interpret that as. But I mean, that's just my interpretation of it. So it will be interesting to see where Bruce and Selena's relationship goes from here, like where they stand at this point in time. So I did like the fact is that other Bruce, kind of getting back to him, how he jumped off the building and was like pretty much unscathed by that. And now he was a little kind of run down after the whole beatdown and everything when he beat those other dudes up. Now I'm wondering, is it that kind of like a ramification, kind of like Fish's situation where like every time she used her powers, it kind of wore her down. It was slowly killing her. Is he like that, or is he more of a, like, maybe in a situation, maybe his body isn't breaking down like hers because maybe he's more of a complete experiment like she is? I mean, because really, Fish was kind of the more, well, her and, well, there were others, but mainly I think Fish was kind of the biggest success of all the experiments. So I was wondering, maybe like using his powers kind of ends up draining him a little bit more, so that's why he was kind of a little worn out afterwards. Or maybe that's just, I mean, maybe that's just a byproduct of being, sliced up a little bit. So it could easily be that. What I really find so fascinating, it's what's happening now that, that group has him now. Yes, like I said, I'm going to just refer to them as a group until their name comes up in the shows. Just for, I know it's weird, it's stupid, because I've already called them by their name multiple times, like last season and this season. But nevertheless, the organization. And it makes you wonder, what plans do they have for him? Because they did say, like, technically we are your parents. I mean, they're the one that kind of commissioned Strange to do his experiments. So, I don't know. I mean, it's like, oh, you're not Bruce Wayne, but you could be so much more. So, like, I'm curious, are they going, like, because I thought about the fact is that he was going to impersonate Bruce and that beat anything. But it's like, nope. Maybe when it comes down to, would be the organization kind of doing that, because like, oh, we're your family, you should do this for us, type of thing. Maybe try and brainwash him. Maybe in fact brainwash him into thinking he is the real Bruce Wayne. Make him. I mean, because they probably have all this access to information about him, so they just pump it, through his head, make him read all these files, just kind of brainwash him into thinking he's Bruce to the point he truly believes it. So, because I'm very curious, like, because there had to be a reason why. Another Bruce was made, and I've always said it had to be trying to take over the whole Wayne Enterprise situation, and maybe that's what the organization is trying to do. Because with him out in the front, they can kill Bruce without any issue, because it's like, oh, the world won't realize that the real Bruce Wayne is gone because we got, oh, this fake up here. But I'm very curious to see where that will go. Part of me is thinking maybe not. That it won't necessarily play out that way, that what we'll get instead is eventually down the road, maybe the other Bruce will kind of snap out of it. He's like, I'm tired. I don't want to be Bruce Wayne. I want to be someone else. I want to be my own person, kind of gain an identity of his own. I know just kind of random things. Like, if you do know anything about another Bruce, kind of DC comic wise, do let me know, because I'm very curious. Is that kind of just a Gotham thing, or is that kind of a storyline that's popped up in anything else Batman related? I mean, I might probably take some time to research it myself. I say that, but I most likely won't because I'm lazy like that. But I mean, that is something I am curious about. So, and another thing this episode was the people that the Mad Hatter hired, the tweets. Now, once again, it's kind of another villain's kind of similar to the Mad Hatter. I think I'm familiar with them once again because of I think Arkham Asylum. Like there was a profile on like the Tweeds, weren't there? Tweedledee and Tweedledum. I think I remember something like that. There's a whole bunch of them. Well, one is locked up, two of them are dead, and two of them kind of were loose with last time we saw them they were with the Mad Hatter. So I'm guessing that's them. I don't remember their backstory that much. Just kind of, I just have a vague notion of remembering I came across their profiles on that or something like that. That's kind of just all I'm chalking that up to. Is just, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. And then finally, the other big thing in this episode was the fact this Penguin got elected. Now I'm very curious. I would have thought this whole like mayor thing would have kind of got drawn out a little bit more, the whole election and everything, but it's like nope, it's like it's done and he got elected. What I liked is the whole situation about like Butch and Nigma. Now I thought Butch was going to do some like shady stuff on the side, but I was like nope, he did shady stuff on the side because Penguin asked him to basically pay off some electoral people to kind of elect him as mayor. And it's like Nigma's like, no, you don't have to do that. Don't do it that way. I even like the example he did where he pay that little girl to say, oh no, like, oh, you thank you so much for getting rid of the monsters. And then she's like, pay up. And I'm like, wait, what? And then Nigma handed her the money. I was like, dude, kind of hitting Penguin with the hard truth. And that was basically like, you could easily sway someone's opinion, that you can buy someone's love, but it's only momentary. I mean, you can buy their vote, their attention, but you can't buy their love. That basically Nigma wanted Penguin to earn their love because for one, it'd make him feel better because for one, he even said to himself, he's never really been loved by anybody. So this is kind of the first time. I mean, obviously his mother, but people in general, he's kind of mostly despised by everyone. The only person that ever really cared for him was his mom. So I don't know, it's just kind of interesting, like, seeing Nigma step up. And because, like I said, I thought, Butch was kind of doing some shady stuff behind Penguin's back, and Nigma was going to call him out on and kind of take him down type of situation, which he kind of did this episode, because he was like, see, Penguin, I believe in you, even when you don't believe in you. And then Penguin turned around and be like, yeah, Butch, he believed in me, you didn't. And Connor's basically making Nigma his second-hand man, even making him his chief of staff, with this whole mayor situation. And it's just, you see it kind of eating away at Butch. So I am curious to see what that will all entail. I'm very curious to see what kind of things he does as mayor, because it's so interesting, because it's like you've seen him as Penguin the villain. What will he do as mayor? Will he actually be a good guy, or will he kind of be what Butch kind of makes him out to be, where Butch is like, the moment Penguin gets elected as mayor, we're going to kind of run this town. So it's kind of like, will he just kind of keep his empire kind of like secretly working behind the scenes, and it's just like, oh, Penguin's behind us. Of course I'm not. I'm the mayor now. I'm trying to protect the city. I've earned your respect and your love, and I'm not going to let you down now type of situation, or what? It's just like, it's so interesting, because for the first time in a long while, like, he has a little grasp on real power. I mean, he's run the town in the past, but I don't think to this extent, because he's run this town through fear. Now he's going to run it through love, even though he's probably still the criminal he is. I mean, I doubt that's ever going to go away. You're not the Penguin for no reason. So I'm very curious to see how he'll handle things and what it will mean for the show moving forward. Because in some shape or form, he's going to have to lose that power at some point, but I'm curious under what circumstances. And I kind of brought it up earlier in the episode. I kind of brought her, specifically her, not just Ed, but Fish and the whole Strange thing. Haven't seen hide nor hair of them for a while, or, well, the rest of her people with abilities and stuff like that. So I'm very curious, the experiments. I'm very curious, like, how that's all working. I mean, I'm sure it must not be working that well. I mean, it must be working well enough if, like, Strange is still alive. I mean, because I feel like if he was not useful, Fish would have killed him a long time ago. But I'm very curious on that front, like, about, because she did want Strange so that he could fix her as well as make others. So it'd be kind of interesting if we kind of see, like, a future clash between Penguin leading as the mayor versus Fish leading her army of people. And then, behind the scenes of everything, you have the Mad Hatter kind of playing his game. It's going to be interesting seeing those two meet up, because they kind of have similar things. Like, he's being a hypnotist. I mean, way more to it than that, just controlling people's minds, and then you have Fish. I wonder would his powers actually work on Fish or not. I hope that's where that leads to them actually confronting it. I didn't even think about that until just now. That'd be kind of sick to see those two come together and actually see if his power could actually work on Fish or not. Also, we haven't seen Ivy because, you know, she got brought up this episode, and I kind of got me thinking, it's like, oh, we haven't seen her since she killed the guy, and, you know, that she was like, oh, you're not going to respect plants, so she basically killed him for it. So a very interesting episode with many interesting developments all around, and I'm very curious to see where we go from here next week. And now moving on to the season premiere of Supergirl, which, once again, super hyped about it. I was super excited. I got super giddy in this episode. Super excited to see Tyler Hoechlin as Superman. Not only because, you know, because I love it, like, just straight out adore Teen Wolf. If you've never seen Teen Wolf, I highly recommend it. Why I'm bringing it up? Because Tyler Hoechlin was on Teen Wolf. He was, like, a main cast member, like, the first 4 seasons. Technically, like, 5 because, you know, season 3 being like 2-parters, but still, nevertheless, I really like him as Superman. I even love how in this episode they address like the whole age thing, because it's like, well, you're supposed to be like 12 years older than her, and he's like, yeah, Kryptonians, we age slower here on Earth. Because I was bringing it up too. I was like, there's supposed to be a bigger gap in age between you two, like, because Tyler Hoechlin and Melissa Benoist are kind of pretty close to the same age. There's only like a few years difference, like a very minimum amount, like single digits. So it's like, I mean, nevertheless, I'm not going to complain about it. I really like their chemistry in this episode. It's just kind of been like, yo, cuz, we're working together. It's the coolest thing ever. And I love how people around just like, oh man, Superman. Oh, you're the best. It's like, you know, when it went to the new DEO office, which I love Kara's reaction to it. Wait a minute, this has been here this entire time? But you literally made me fly out to that cave, and now you're telling me I didn't have to because there was a closer base that literally everyone apparently knew about, even Alex, because Alex even commented on the fact is, yeah, I knew about this place. It's like a block away from my apartment. And just Kara's just like, I went to that cave. I even got bit by a bat once. Now, to me, I'm thinking, you know, when you think about production-wise, I think it's because, you know, obviously, because I'm pretty sure a lot of the CW, if not all, a lot of the CW shows are filmed in Vancouver. I don't remember where they were originally filming Supergirl when it was on CBS, but I'm guessing with the new location, like that particular area where they had the DEO filmed, I'm guessing now they're just like, oh, well, since we're changing channels, changing like production location, it's modern like filming locations, then I guess, you know, kind of came with that too. So that was kind of interesting. But I also brought up the magic words of just being like when Clark and Kara are working together, and she's kind of like, oh man, I've dreamed of the day we could work together and everything. And it's just like, I know you're breaking the fourth wall. You're talking directly to the audience, but I don't care. I love it. I know you're catering to me a little bit. I don't care because you got me, because I'm loving it. It's just like, I got too giddy in this episode. It's just like, because it's been a while and it feels good to have the show back. It's just, it's so good. Because I kind of, like, I brought it up, is like the fact is people are like, oh man, Superman, congratulate him and everything. It's like, you know, Superman was here last season. Granted, we didn't have an actual person playing him. It was just kind of like, we saw a shadowy person here and there. We saw him from behind. We saw, like, his boots, like, in, like, what was it, last episode, or, like, the second and last episode of last season. So they've technically all met him, but I guess he was unconscious at the point. You know, like, I know I'm getting super technical about it, but still, like, just had to admit it, but I even love the fact is that Wynn was super fanboying out. He's just like, oh man, what about that time, that thing with Lex Luthor, and he's kind of nerding out and everything, and Kara had to be like, Wynn, just calm down. And then also the thing between Clark and John not getting along, you could tell that immediately, and like, you see Alex go like, yo, what the hell is up with that? And it ends up turning out, it's like a long time ago, they were working together until they ended up discovering kryptonite, and rather than destroying it like Clark wanted to, which interestingly enough, it was actually John who actually named it kryptonite. He's like, I actually gave it its name. But instead of destroying it, he kept it, which kind of led to why him and Clark don't really get along. That's why Clark isn't really working with the DEO, even though they kind of had like a somewhat working relationship in the past. That kind of broke that for him, because he asked him not to, but he's like, it's a thing that could hurt me and my cousin. He got him reiterates that this episode. But, John's defense, he's like, there are evil Kryptonians. Last season, it kind of proved that, that there are people with their power level. And it's like kryptonite's kind of the only thing that stops them. It's the best weapon against them. So it's like having some on hand isn't always the worst thing. I mean, but you also see Superman's point of view being like, it's not that he doesn't trust John. He knows that John would never use it against him. But what's to say, eventually down the road that John's no longer, controlling the DEO? Let's not forget that happened last season. So, and I'm thinking about it, where the hell is Lucy at? Because she's supposed to be like, because isn't Hank and Lucy kind of co-heading the DEO? Maybe we just didn't get to see her this episode, but maybe we'll kind of see her in the future. But nonetheless, now that I'm thinking about that too, Lucy probably doesn't know about the whole Clark and Superman thing. She knows about Kara and she knows about Supergirl, but she probably doesn't know about Clark and because I doubt her sisters ever told her that. That was just kind of flickering in the back of my mind. But it's like, what if someone ends up replacing you and they decide to use it against us? Or what about someone gives you the orders? It's like, no, you need to use it against Superman or Supergirl. It's like, yes, it's understandable that there are Kryptonians out there that are evil and stuff like that, but you're still using a weapon that could hurt me and my cousin, and for that, I still just can't work with you guys. So, like I said, it's understandable on both sides, and it's interested to see where that kind of goes from there. Also, side note, a lot of people threw out their theories about who the person is in the kind of Kryptonian shuttle that came down. He is in fact a Kryptonian. Some people are like, oh, please don't let it be her mom. And it's like, nope, it wasn't. Part of me was actually wondering, I was like, is it going to be her mom? But it's like, nope, it's a guy. Some people kind of threw out the possibility of it being like a different version of Superboy. Because I know there's one version of Superboy where basically he's an experiment that's born from Clark and Lex. It kind of built by their DNA. Another one is that basically he's built from Clark's DNA as well as some other alien species. So it makes you wonder, is it going to be that? Like, is that who he's supposed to be? I mean, or is he just kind of like a no-name Kryptonian that just happens to pop up? I mean, he does have Kryptonian powers. I mean, he's unconscious right now, but when they were trying to stick needles in him, it was breaking, so. I was literally thinking about this earlier, but I was trying to find a way to tie back into it. But when I brought up John and the kryptonite, literally in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's kind of why Batman keeps kryptonite around, because he's like, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the whole premise of Batman v Superman. It's like, you don't know what you're capable of. I mean, that type of situation, it's like if something goes wrong, Batman is ready to take down Superman if he needs to, because you need a weapon against someone as powerful as you are that nothing on Earth can really stop. So, it's kind of along those lines. Granted, it's not meant for Clark or Kara. I mean, granted, let's not forget red kryptonite is a thing. Granted, in this show, it's manufactured. It's not like something that naturally exists. So I don't know if that's something we'll ever have to see in the future or not, whether that was just kind of a one-off thing, because it was made by Max Lord accidentally, so when he was basically trying to manufacture his own kryptonite. So, like, once again, kind of understand it. But since I'm talking about Batman, brought up two references to Batman, obviously. One is the fact that Clark's talking to him on the phone. He's like, oh, Mr. Wayne, yeah, I'll get on that as soon as possible. He's like, I'll get on it lickety split. He's like, yeah, I know no one says lickety split anymore, but, you still say that whole Great Caesar's ghost thing. Now, to me, initially, that kind of jumped out at me. I'm like, I've never heard Batman say that. So initially, my brain goes, that must be like some old school Batman thing. But at the same time, my brain, just because the only real old school Batman, I've never really watched it. I'm familiar with it, but I've never watched it. It sounded like some Adam West Batman, from like the 60s, kind of like dialogue of being like, Great Caesar's ghost. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a combination of both, but like initially my brain was like, oh yeah, some probably old school DC Batman comic stuff. And then at the same time, it's also like, but maybe some old school Adam West stuff. But it makes you wonder, is that lickety split thing an actual like old school Superman thing too? I don't know, I'm curious. And at the same time, we had a family like when Clark ended up saving a family from one of the drones. I said droids. When he's saving from one of the drones, you're like, oh man, so cool, Superman. And then when the dad was like, we're moving back to Gotham City. Part of me is like, is that really that much safer? I mean, it's like Batman. Obviously, Batman must exist in his universe. It also makes you wonder, since he called him Brute, like, how close are they? Does he? Because this whole DC TV universe has kind of referenced the fact is that Batman does exist. Hands down, I'm pretty sure everyone's line from the trailers for like DC's Legends of Tomorrow back when season 1 came out. Like I've seen Man of Steel die in Dark Knight's Fall. So kind of referencing Batman, and it, we know that Bruce exists in this universe because of that. I mean, in particular, this is like Earth something, because this isn't Earth 2, this isn't Earth 3, because we know Jay Garrick's from Earth 3, and there's no Flashes that exist on, Supergirl's Earth. So I think someone said the name they're referring to it as is currently is like Earth X, because it's like, well, you don't want to throw out Earth 4 because I would technically call it Earth 4, but originally I would have called it Earth 3 until that whole Jay Garrick thing popped up. So it's like, maybe this is Earth 4, maybe we're going to get introduced to other Earths, so we're not really ready to kind of give it an actual number yet. So for now, we'll just refer to it as Earth X. I know I'm just kind of building upon that, but it's like, who knows? Maybe in this universe, there is no Green Arrow, there is no Flash, none of the superheroes that we kind of know on Earth 1, so maybe Bruce isn't even Batman in this universe. So that is something to kind of think about. Maybe he is just kind of billionaire Bruce Wayne. And he never actually said Bruce, now that I think about it. All he said was Mr. Wayne. So for all we know, it could be like one of Bruce's children that's older and taking over the company because something happened to Bruce. Or maybe his dad's still in charge for all we know. Maybe in this world he didn't die and, maybe that's why Batman might not exist in this world, because Thomas never died. And, Thomas and Martha lived, so he never had a reason to go all vigilante. Have that one moment change his life forever. So, something to keep in mind. And then we also got introduced to Lex's adopted sister, Lena. Which that whole situation was kind of interesting to me. I was thinking by the end of it, we're going to find out, oh yeah, Lena planned it all, like, this whole situation is just all kind of a big publicity stunt, but it turned out not to be. Her brother legitimately wanted to try and kill her, which we ended up finding out Lex is in jail, so that's kind of interesting. But still, like, I was, like, especially because she ended up killing the guy that was trying to kill her. He was hired by Lex. Like I said, considering who he is, it kind of makes sense. It's like, okay, Lex would try and kill her. The type is, like, I always keep doing this, and I apologize, but it's like, it's my biggest source of Superman knowledge, and that's Smallville. Yes, Smallville did a lot of different things because it kind of became its own continuity and everything. But there's a lot of stuff, like the whole, like, having a sister thing, like him and Tess were sisters, played by the lovely Cassidy Freeman, who I had, like, it wasn't until, like, was it last year? Maybe way earlier this year, came to find out her brother is Crispin Freeman. I was like, that's so cool. I know this is not the show to be talking about that, but I was tripping out about that. I was like, dude, I love your... It's like, for one, I love you just as an actress and everything, but I love your brother. Just, he's been like, he's some of, like, my favorite anime and video games he's voiced stuff in. It's just like, he probably has one of my favorite voices, just because it's just, for one, he also has one of the most recognizable voices, at least to me. You hear him long enough, it's just one of those things that's kind of like, oh yeah, that's totally Crispin Freeman. So it blew my mind that they were related. I just happened to randomly stumble across that. I was just like, that's so cool. Beside the point. But the fact is, Tess was like legitimately blood related. So that was kind of like my own other experience with Lex actually having siblings. So they kind of brought it over in Supergirl, but it seems like it was an adopted thing. And she actually kind of said, like, the only person that was ever really kind to her is Lex. But, he kind of changed when he kind of got obsessed with trying to take down Superman and kind of landed him in jail where he currently is. Which I'm very curious to, since we do have our Superman, will we ever get a Lex Luthor, like, or will he always just kind of be the evil guy in the shadows? But it is kind of interesting. The fact is that Lena is trying to brand LexCorp, because it's no longer just LexCorp, it's L-Corp. Kind of trying to rebrand it as, it's like, my brother's done a lot of bad stuff and I'm trying to turn it back around and do some good with it. Literally in the back of my mind, I just, because, Clark kind of said it best this episode, like, you can't necessarily trust a Luther, can't trust anything that come out of her mind. He's kind of turning a new leaf on her, being like, I'm sorry, I didn't kind of believe you before, but now I kind of do, kind of giving you the benefit of the doubt. And she's like, oh, if I can change Clark Kent's mind, maybe I can, change everyone else's minds too. And it's like, I don't know. I'm still kind of holding out judgment. I'll wait, because I'm getting the feeling like there's a lot more to that. Because sadly, that Luther gene runs deep. I mean, but once again, now I think about it, it's like, well, yes, they're not related, but she is adopted. But nevertheless, that upbringing couldn't have been. I'm very curious, like, what their actual upbringing was in this universe. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Maybe that's kind of their sly way of tying that together. I mean, obviously, do not take place in the same universe as Batman v Superman. It's kind of like that's a different Earth, just like all this other stuff DC related on TV shows, like The Flash and Arrow, all take place on Earth 1. This is a different Earth, so you could be like, DC movies are a different Earth too. So it's kind of like parallel universities and all that stuff. So I actually don't even remember what my point is. It was literally there, and I just let it slip back through me. What the hell am I saying? I'm moving on because I'm confusing the hell out of myself. Anyway, multiple things. A big part of this episode also was Kara kind of figuring herself out. And it's something I never really thought of. Like, to me, I thought Kara had found a pretty nice balance last season, but it seems like this season it kind of pushes it forward. The fact is, she still hasn't quite figured out how to balance herself as Supergirl versus being Kara, because it's like life is good and everything, but now there's like so many different opportunities awaiting her. Kat even offered her that new job, new position last season. Which I'd almost forgot. She was like, why is Kat calling me? Like, I'm not her assistant anymore. I'm like, what? You're not? I was like, right. The new office and everything at the end of season 1. How could I forget? And then she's telling Kara to decide what she wants for her job. And because Kara's kind of being like, oh, you want me to kind of make that decision now? Well, I mean, you literally offered me that position like 12 hours ago, which is kind of interesting. But like, you kind of tell by the circumstances, it's like this season kind of picks up like literally right where last season left off. It's like, yeah, so season 1 ended about, I'd say 5 seconds ago, so that was just kind of interesting to me. It was up to Kara to kind of decide. First, Kara was like, okay, I took this online test, and it's like, oh yeah, marketing, there's disadvantages, this, and this. And then Kat was like, okay, you're being stupid. Dig deep inside. Find out what do you want to do? It has to be something that you want. It can't just be something that you're like, oh, it should be this way or that way. The only person that can tell what path is right for you, it's you. And I mean, it always blows my mind how well her and Kat gel. Kat isn't always the easiest boss, as you can tell. It's like, I mean, it took her a long time to kind of get Kara's name right, but still, she's always there to kind of give her advice, because she kind of even says it this episode. She sees a little bit of herself in Kara. Like, that's why she hired her, because she sees the potential that Kara has and that she will go off to do great things. Especially when Kara ends up deciding for herself, like, what she's going to do for her job, and is going to be a reporter. Now, I find that very interesting. Because Supergirl, I'm not that familiar with her. Like, I know a little bit here and there, but I'm not that familiar with, like, her everyday normal life, like, as a human. So it's like, what does she do for a living? I thought, like, Catco was just going to be it and everything, but it's like, oh, becoming a reporter? That's very interesting. Kind of following your cousin's footsteps. So that'd be kind of interesting to see that, like, them kind of competing for, stories and stuff like that, especially because he's going to be staying in National City for a while. He's like, oh, maybe I'll stick around, you tell me a little bit more about Krypton, because she does have more, memories about it and everything. So, but it's just kind of interesting that Kat was like, that's the job I totally, for the moment I hired you, like, I saw your resume, I wrote reporter, put your resume in my desk, and just hired you on the spot, because, like I said, she saw a little bit of herself in there. Because Kat used to be a reporter way back in the day too, so it's just kind of, I guess, she just had that instinct about it. I love that kind of the, like, metaphor she used, that basically she's in front of, like, cars in front of a large body of water, and basically there's all these different paths in front of her. The reason why she can't figure out what she wants to do is because she's scared to move forward, because she wants all these paths that are in front of her, and there are all these wonderful paths. It's like she'd be happy to go down any of them, but what it would mean is giving up who she is. Because she even said it herself. not show relative wise, but basically she spent all her time trying to figure out how to be Supergirl. That's kind of a big part of what season 1 was about. And I thought it was more so like balancing everything out, but it was figuring out who she was as Supergirl. But now this season, it seems like the big part is finding out who she is as Kara, because it's like basically getting back to Kat's metaphor, being like, you don't want to give up who you are. Like, this Kara is who you've always been, and you're a little scared to see what Kara you will be whenever you go down these paths. You know, you kind of want to just dive right in, a little afraid to dive in, you know, because you're worried about, oh, the water being cold, this and that, rather than just going for it. It's like, you know, don't be afraid to kind of push forward, essentially, you know? And it just, I don't know, the whole situation, I know I'm not doing it justice, but that whole situation kind of, it felt nice, it felt right. And it's just like, once again, it's just, like, I give mad props to the actress Callista Flockhart. Like, she does an amazing job at playing Kat. Just her sassiness and almost just kind of like that fierce attitude she has, says what she wants, and just, I don't know, she does a really good job, and that's probably hands down one of my favorite relationships in this show, is because that it's not even just a boss and, you know, co-worker type of situation. It's like she almost, in a way, covers like a sister role, a best friend role, almost somewhat like a mother role as well. I mean, she is a mother, so it kind of makes sense. So there was also this thing this episode where she was like, it seemed like something was bothering her, and she was basically like, oh, she's going to have to like take her own advice. So I was like, I don't know what that meant. Part of me was thinking like, is that something with Max Sword? Because apparently they had a little bit of a thing, you know, we kind of saw that a little bit in season 1. So I was like, maybe taking a dive on that. I don't know. I mean, we didn't see him this season. Makes you wonder how he's going to feel. I just thought about that, how he's going to feel about Superman being in National City. And really quickly, since we're talking about Kat and everything, and Superman, like, I was dumbfounded by how that went down. Just like how, like, Kat turned into an almost completely different person. She's like, why did you know Clark? Why didn't you tell me you knew Clark? Just kind of freshening herself up and be like, Clark, Kat, it's so good to see you. It's like, what? Where did that come from? She's like, are you still with Lois? Are y'all still going good? Or did you finally break up like I said you always would be? I still never got paid for my bet. And he's like, no, we're doing good. We're still going strong. She's like, oh, almost so disappointed. It was like, you almost saw a different side to her. And I love what Clark kind of referred to it as, like, I forgot what the exact word he used. Right, the exact phrasing he used was, I had sway with her. So that was just, it was so interesting seeing that side of Kat just kind of being like that. I don't know. It was just kind of mind blowing. And also little side notes here and there. Win is kind of working at the DEO now. Is that full time? Like, because we didn't see him at all at Catco, so I'm assuming that's kind of a full time thing. When did that happen? Like, I don't remember him exactly quitting last season, but maybe he just decided to make that decision because it's like, well, you know, just this is kind of where I belong. This is where I can do the best work. So, and then also, sadly, the whole thing between Jimmy and Kara, like, you were kind of hoping it's like she worked so hard, you know, that relationship. They're just kind of like, oh, they always had a thing for each other. And then when the time finally comes that they're together, it's just kind of like Kara's at the point of her life where she doesn't really know for sure what she wants. And at this point in time, her and Jimmy being just friends is kind of what she wants, and it's kind of sad. It's just kind of like, oh, you just, oh, relationship stuff, yeah, doing good, and it's like, oh, it's a little heartbreaking and everything. It's just kind of, you were just kind of thinking like, oh, things were new and good, but it's like, I don't know. Part of me was thinking what was going to be the ultimate problem was like the whole superhero thing might interfere, but it's like, out of anyone, Jimmy would understand the most. I mean, but I'm very curious to see where that kind of goes, like where that would kind of all kind of take place. Like, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling. Overall, really liked the episode. I'm super stoked for this season. I'm very curious to see, like, you know, how everything plays out. Like, who are, you know, because a main villain I'm wrong. I was about to say a main villain hasn't been set up, but it's like, no, we saw at the very end of the episode, we have Cadmus kind of stepping up to be. I mean, we still have the whole situation about Alex's dad, like Jeremiah, to like worry about, like, you know, just trying to, you know, find him in this Cadmus lab and then kind of shut them down. So I'm guessing they're going to be the main antagonists of this season. Totally forgot about them. Also, the guy that was the assassin that got shot in this episode, the one that kind of went after Lena, like, she said, oh, don't worry, we'll get, like, basically turning him into Metello. Now, I'm not good with names, especially when it comes to villains and stuff like that, but isn't that Superman's villain, like, he's kind of part machine, and it, like, his core is kryptonite? Isn't that him, or am I thinking of a different villain? I could swear that was his name, Metello. If so, that's going to be kind of interesting, seeing how, because I don't remember what his story is. Like, I mean, for him to end up being like a bad guy already before he became an even worse guy is just kind of interesting. Like, I thought he was just kind of a normal dude that eventually got turned into basically a supervillain. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe he was kind of always a terrible person. I mean, because in this one he was basically an assassin. So on top of basically being a machine, if he is who I think he is, because I'm making all these assumptions based on like him being who I think he is. I really like the design, like, though, like they're showing like his veins kind of popping like that and his eyes changing color, which kind of look pretty cool. So I'm super excited for the season to see what they decide to do with it. And finally, last but not least, moving on to this week's episode of Lucifer. So Lucifer is still struggling with the whole fact of like, hey, mom's back type of thing, and it's affecting multiple things throughout his life. For one, I love the whole like doing it, you know, his little play thing, not referring to the girl as a plaything, but like the act of doing what he's doing as his play space thing, you know, just, you know what I'm trying to say. Just how like the girl he was with was like, whoa, like, oh, she's hot. Like, oh, so this is kind of like where we're going with this. And he's like, no, that's my mother. And she's like, okay, things just got weird and left. It's just kind of sad that like his mom had to step in. It's one of those weird things. It's just like being caught. That weird feeling of like, oh, being caught by your parents. It's doing something you shouldn't be doing. I mean, he's a fully grown adult. I mean, even more so than other people. Even more so than others, you know, being like extremely old and everything, but still no less awkward and weird. What I did like in this episode is the fact is that his mom is trying to understand his life a little bit better. The whole Lux situation, running a club, why he surrounds himself with humans, why he does the job that he does. Like, you working, you know, punishing people. It's like, you're here on Earth. Why are you basically reverting back to your old job? You could do anything with your you know, with yourself, but you decide to kind of go back into old habits. And she even throws out a possibility. Are you doing that because you want to impress God? Do you want to impress your dad? Is that what you're trying to do that? It's like, you shouldn't do that. He made you this way. Like, you know, and that was kind of an interesting thing. And I'm sure, I mean, it led to Lucifer kind of thinking about it, why he does what he does. Because he loves punishing people. And he's always kind of been like, okay, why do I do it? Is it kind of just an innate thing? Or was it kind of an outward stimulus of just the fact of what his dad did to him? His dad put him in that position and he just did it. I mean, it led to an interesting thing. I mean, obviously it's coinciding with the case, because the case is dealing with a person kind of taking vengeance into their own hand, because it's like, basically these people humiliated people. First, you had that guy who basically set one of his coworkers' crotch on fire with a lighter. It's like, I thought that was hilarious. It's like, why is that funny? You could have seriously damaged him. I mean, granted, karma came back with the whole like him getting burned, and it started with his crotch. So I mean, that sucked for him. But also the second guy, basically he had a relationship with a girl, and she was basically a teacher, and ended up, after they broke up or whatever, he posted like their little sexcapade on like line on basically the main website. That's kind of the feature of this episode, was like Wobble is what it's called. And basically they ended up firing her, and she sadly ended up killing herself for it. So, you know, at first it's kind of a situation because Lucifer himself is a punisher, so he's kind of like, go ahead, I'm okay with punishing. At first I thought he was coming to kind of cut in on my territory, because, you know, punishing people is my thing. I don't want someone else kind of taking it up as a hobby. But then, you know, it, you know, once again start making him question like why he does what he does. Like, you know, And, he ended up confronting the killer and ended up being that guy, Ray. And he was just kind of like, oh, I just grew tired of everything. But then he was like, no, you didn't. You did all this because you like it. Like, you might have started off with the best of intentions. Yeah, you were trying to get the first guy back. That's understandable. You just kind of slipped up and, like, did it. It wasn't, like, full blown out, like, enjoyment. But subsequently, you've enjoyed it more and more. It's never been more. It's not just, it's because you got the thrill of it, the kind of bit of a bloodlust for it. And that's why you're going through this situation of, like, trying to frame the CEO of that whole group. What was her name? Lila? Played by the lovely Robin Givens. That was kind of interesting. Also, side note, I've seen that actor who plays Ray before, the killer in this episode. I could never place where I remembered seeing him from. It finally clicked in my head this episode where I've seen him from. Chuck. He was like one of the people. I forgot, where was the place Chuck and his buddy worked at? Sarah kind of worked there for a little while. It's been such a long time since I've seen Chuck, so I don't remember people's names that well. But it was the store that they basically worked at, like, for a lot of the series. Like, that was one of their coworkers. He was kind of one of the main coworkers that you saw from time to time. And it finally clicked in my head. I was like, oh yeah, that's you, dude. But nonetheless, once again, it was just kind of an interesting thing because, Lucifer is kind of like, no one starts off as a sin eater, wanting to kind of be a punisher, to punish people. No one kind of starts off that way. You start off hopeful, dreaming, kind of have the best of intentions, and then it's just like you see the evil that is kind of people, and it just kind of whittles away at your soul type of situation. So, I mean, that's me just kind of putting it my way. That's how I kind of interpret kind of what he was saying. I'm not verbatim saying the way he was, but that's kind of saying it very loosely, so. And ultimately, Lucifer decided, you know what, he kind of is the way he is because he does enjoy it. He's really good at it. And part of me is like, I don't know whether I 100% believe that or not. I do legitimately think Lucifer, whether he wants to really admit it or not, he does. It's something Chloe brought up last season. He does it because he's actually a good guy. He wants to get justice for people. He makes it seem like he doesn't care about people, but I think the sad truth is he kind of does. And I think he tries this whole, like, nonchalant bravado of his just kind of as his way of kind of coping. This kind of like very dismissive personality of his. Just because he does want to help people out, but he just, I don't know. I think he's so kind of self-centered to the point he can't realize that's what he really wants type of thing. I mean, excuse me. He doesn't really have a clear-cut idea of what it is he does want. Because, I mean, he finally came to a somewhat decision this episode about what to do about his mom. And he's like, I am a punisher, so I've come up with a good punishment. And it's going to be, I am not going to send you back to hell. You're going to stay here on Earth. Not just stay here. You're going to live as a human. That means going back to Charlotte's husband and children and being there for him. It's like you go through this. You can actually prove to me and Amenadal that you are actually here to kind of fix things between us, that we could actually be a family and we actually believe you, and just instead of thinking it's a complete and utter horse crap. Which I just kind of wasn't expecting that exact punishment, because I was constantly wondering about that. It's like you're literally running around as a dead woman, yet her family, how's that going to like play out? Because I'm pretty sure Chloe still, because she saw his mom pop up at the police station, which I'll get to that in a second, but she was kind of like, I'm sure she's probably under the impression that there's something between them. I mean, I'm sure that's going to come up later, and she's like, oh, that's your new girlfriend. He's like, girlfriend? No. Oh, God, no. Don't ever say something like that again. And it's so interesting because you get to see that very disturbed side of Lucifer that you don't get to see. Like, one of my favorite bits last season was just kind of like, he was with this girl, and she was eating strawberries and stuff like that. She was like, oh, God. And he was like, really? Why'd you have to bring him in this? You just ruined the mood now. Like, that's kind of one of those situations where you kind of see him kind of a little off kilter a little bit. So, and I'm very interested to see how her being here will continue to influence him, because what we saw at the end of the episode, we saw her kind of being mugged and she ended up killing the guy. Now, at first it seems like, oh, she's a little remorseful, and then a smirk comes across her face. Now, I don't know how to interpret that. It could be that it's like, oh, I didn't realize even in this human form I have such power. Like, she felt good because of the power, or is it just the fact is of killing someone? Like, maybe kind of has Lucifer's kind of interpreting the fact is that he's always been good at torturing people. That's just what he's good at. maybe that, I mean, because she doesn't really think much of humanity. She thinks very little of them. I did love the whole like her dancing on the table thing, and it's just kind of like she's like, yeah, I was grinding up against this guy, this human male, and I got this tingly feeling here, and it's just like, ew. I feel so bad for Lucifer because it's like no one should have to go through that. That's a moment no conversation, any son should ever have to be a part of with his mom. So that's just, it's like I said, it's so interesting to see him off kilter. But I am curious like what this all means, because it's like we already see that she already has a plan. We still don't know what that plan is, what her ultimate goal is. But it does seem like maybe she has a Amenadal as well as Lucifer kind of on her side. Now, the thing I was mentioning earlier that I was trying to get back to is the fact is she kind of has a similar power to Lucifer, except he doesn't use his as much as he did in last season. That basically has this like automatic charisma about him that automatically makes people attracted to him. Now, it seems like his mom also has that, but I don't know if she does that on purpose or not. Like, I'm trying to remember because it's been a little while, but I think Lucifer didn't have to necessarily try when it came to people either. It was just kind of a natural thing. But it seems like it dies down because it doesn't seem like it naturally happens anymore. So maybe his time on Earth has kind of whittled that down, or maybe that's something he can choose whether to activate or not. And it makes me wonder, is the same thing happening for his mom? Because his mom was at the police station, all those people were gathered around her laughing and everything. She was like, oh, someone led me here, all I had to do was smile at them. So I'm like, is it something that she can control, or is it just kind of activating on its own? And maybe it's something eventually she'll learn how to control. I mean, I don't know. I'm very curious to see how that works. And then you had the whole situation with Mazakin, which I love that because it's kind of like her and Dr. Martin hanging out. Lucifer still doesn't know about that. I was so sure because he was heading back to Lux, so I was so sure that he was going to run into them and everything. And it's like, wait, you two are hanging out? Like, because he still doesn't know that's one of her friends that she's hanging out with. But like, Dr. Martin's basically saying that Mazakin's made good progress. And then Lucifer's mom comes up. Initially, Linda's kind of taken it as jealousy for her being a new girlfriend, and Maze isn't like, no, it's not like that. Because I legitimately don't think her and Lucifer think of each other like that. Things will probably happen between them, but it's probably like just all in fun. I don't think there's anything emotional attached to it. They do sadly care, not sad, I don't know why the hell I said like that. Well, I mean, I'm sure in Mazakin's case, she thinks sadly she still cares about Lucifer. I mean, but overall, they've always had each other's back. And it's kind of a mutual thing. I don't know whether they really consider it having feelings for each other, but they're always there for each other. Sadly for Lucifer, he hasn't always been there for Mazakin. I think that's what I was trying to lead to before, but I completely screwed it up. At least, Mazakin feels like she's always been there for him, but he's never really been there for her. It just, during the whole situation with her and Amenadal, they were just kind of using her as kind of like a back and forth thing, kind of like, hey, do this for me, do that for me, kind of spying him, blah, 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 blah. So, but basically she realizes that she's kind of the only one that really sees that Mama Morningstar there's a lot more to her, that she is poison and that Lucifer just can't see it. So who does she go to? She goes to Amenadal, trying to get him to kind of do something about it without directly saying anything. I'm curious why she didn't say anything. Like directly being like, oh yeah, your mom's here. I need you to get her out of Lucifer's life. Lucifer's not willing to take her back to hell like he's supposed to. So, which in this episode we kind of saw Amenadal, I guess, kind of the reaction to what he discovered last episode. His feathers are falling out. His wings are essentially dying. He's losing his powers because we see in this episode he's trying to stop the wine, which he's able to bit by bit, but not fully stop it. He's even hiding it from Mazakin, just like, what were you doing? She's like, oh, I know what's going on here. And she's basically bringing up the fact is that him having rebound sex. He's like, it's okay. And she's like, I'm not going to stop you having rebound sex. I mean, I've been having it too. And you see the kind of look on his face, and you kind of see his heart break, knowing like, oh, and it kind of breaks your own heart seeing that. It's kind of like, oh, nobody wants to hear that, but it's like, dude, like, she was basically like, hey, get rid of this woman in Lucifer's life. And he was basically, I'll talk to Lucifer. She's like, you answered that pretty quickly. And he's like, yeah, it's time for me to actually step up and be the big brother and everything. So it's kind of sad that he's still dealing with this all on his own. He has yet to tell anybody. I don't even think he's ever told his mom too. Like, finding out who she was, that she was basically saying, like, during the conversation, it's like, you without hesitation dragged me back to hell. Like, always following your dad's orders, always being the good son that obeys without question. Lucifer was always the kind of troublemaker. He ended up, I guess in a sense, asking too many questions. But because we did find out that he was the one that dragged her to hell in this episode, and that's why Lucifer has been super reluctant about asking Amenadal like to meet up with her, even though she wants to meet up with him because she wants to kind of mend fences and whatnot. So, but she basically said the keywords of like, no matter what happens, know that I will always love you. So, I don't know, like, part of me is thinking multiple things. Like, maybe one, she was able to kind of convince him. It's just like, oh, she is trying to be a good mother. Maybe it's kind of why he's probably going along with Lucifer's plan. Of like, he didn't really say anything about when Lucifer was saying like, okay, you know, you have to live your life as Charlotte. So, but I'm also wondering, could he even do it even if he wanted to? He's losing his powers, so meaning he probably can't travel between realms like he wants to. So he's kind of screwed in that department. But obviously he didn't bring that up, so I doubt even his mom knows. I mean, because none of them are good at sharing, because Lucifer, you know, she didn't know about the whole him cutting his wings off thing until now. So I don't think any of them really know about this whole wing situation. So, and then kind of one final thing to kind of note in this episode is that Dan and Chloe are kind of reaching that point. Because essentially this whole, like, you know, revenge, punishing people thing, Lucifer kind of brought up the fact that Chloe has basically been punishing Dan, and she's kind of like, wait, what? He's like, oh, the cold shoulders, to kind of a little dismissive about certain things, and she's like, okay, I get it. And Lucifer's like, don't you realize that what you're doing is affecting those kind of close to you? She's like, Trixie? He's like, no, I'm talking about how this is affecting me. Once again, self-centered and everything. But it is kind of sad that basically at the end of the episode, Dan is like, we should get a divorce. And it's just kind of like, we will always be there. I will always be there for Trixie and everything. But it's like, we can't lie to our daughter, you know, because, you know, Chloe came to the decision. She's like, okay, we can go on the camping trip together. It's just because we need it, you know, because initially she was like, we shouldn't go because that basically lying to Trixie. And it kind of got Dan thinking about things. It's like, yes, she's mad at Dan for everything he did, although things that went down in season 1. But the fact is, he's working extremely hard to make things right. And she sees that, and she's willing to kind of try and meet him halfway. But he was just like, you know what, we should get a divorce. So I'm very interested to see where that goes and where that means for everything moving forward. Because something that kind of keeps popping in my head is Chloe is like the main reason why Lucifer does anything he does. Yes, the whole punishing people thing is very important to him, whatnot. I still think, you know, he's secretly a good guy and wants to do what's best for people, whether he'll admit it or not. But, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, that's kind of a whole conflict, you know, inside of him and everything about what he really wants. But Chloe is a big part of the reason why he does the job he does, because he's fascinated by her. He's intrigued by her. He just likes their partnership. It's kind of sad because he's actually like, I think that's one of the reasons why Mazikeen was always so against Chloe, is because she kind of replaced him, because Mazikeen was always that person by Lucifer's side, but now it's Chloe. I mean, that's kind of why, I mean, it kind of worked out because now Mazikeen's kind of finding her own way in the world, kind of with Dr. Martin's help and whatnot. But I'm because we got a little peek at Mama Lucifer kind of realizing that, you know, last episode when she was looking at Lucifer acting a little differently, or he's kind of like, Chloe was arresting the killer from last episode, and it kind of had a smile across his face and everything. You see his mom kind of look at him like that. So I'm curious, like, will she eventually find out a big part of what makes Lucifer different now is because of Chloe? I mean, especially when she finds out what Chloe being around her means for Lucifer, that he becomes mortal and everything. I'm curious, like, what kind of reaction will she have, and what will she do with that information? Like, what, I get the feeling she'll use it for evil, because I can't even fathom what her ultimate goal is. I've kind of thrown out there, it's like kind of taking her rightful place back, kind of gaining back all the power she had before, kind of possibly overthrowing God. I don't know. She says she wants her family back, but maybe it's because she wants them to help her kind of reclaim what she feels is rightfully hers, type of thing. I don't know. I'm very interested to see what that is, and hopefully we'll get some more answers about the whole situation soon. But, you know, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.